All right. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all back on another webinar, a very interesting topic, and I think it's a timely topic to discuss. We will be talking about how to use data science and how that can help enhance the cybersecurity of every organization. So ISC2 Colombo chapter is very happy to host such programs. We've been consistently having these evening discussions, webinars, talk shows, whatever you call it. We've been able to bring value to our members, right? So we continue to endeavor to have such programs in the future as well. So today we have a very distinguished speaker. His name is Duminder Jayatilaka. He specializes in advanced analytics, AI, and data science. He's got the passion for digital transformation of business. I'm also privileged to have worked with him. I continue to work with him. So it's great to have you here with us, Duminder.
Thank you.
So he also is the assistant vice president with John Keel's Holdings PLC. And he's also responsible for delivery of data analytics projects. So with that brief note, I would like to welcome you, Duminder. Thank you very much for taking time to share your knowledge and experience with the membership. Over to you, Duminder.
Thank you, Sujit, and good afternoon, probably it's evening now. It's evening for everyone. I think I would not talk about myself because I think Sujit, you put a little bit of icing on the cake also. So thank you very much. Just to quickly brief, so I've been working in machine learning, data science, and advanced analytics for almost last 12 years now, in multiple domains across bank and financial services, retail, manufacturing, and few other domains. Predominantly delivering advanced analytics use cases to add bottom line impact and FTE savings across. But also very recently, there were requests that was coming in, particularly from the data science aspect of cybersecurity, as well as network monitoring and all that. How can advanced analytics probably help? So I put together quite a bit of slides. I put some technical slides also at the end, just to give a little bit of flavor in terms of how we can really understand a little bit how data science and machine learning models could help us to identify and help us in terms of some of the analytics. We'll spend a little bit time understanding what is the difference between the data analytics and the cybersecurity analytics. So I will probably run through some of the known facts, some of the unknown facts, and if there are any questions at any given point of time, please do raise the hand, and we can probably deep dive if time permits.
So, Duminder, what I would also like to add is, Duminder would walk us through a presentation, and then we would also engage in a discussion, right?
Yep.
So that's what our intention is. So we would have an interactive session, try and answer every question you may have, or we would also like to hear from you, your experience, your views on this subject. Duminder, over to you.
Thanks, Sujit. So just before I start, also just to add a little bit of color around, right? When I say that I've been deeply involved in advanced analytics and data science, most of the businesses across are using data to unleash value, right? So basically these days, what people are looking at is how can you really create a bottom line impact, and what is the value proposition that we bring in, right? I've also seen that there was less focus being put into cybersecurity and data security when these things are being taken into account, especially when you're working in an organization where different business entities are there, and maybe GDPR or any other data protection constraints are falling on you. Sometimes bringing this data and making sure that all the other parameter security has been put forward, and how can we really use the advanced analytics also to help that initiative has become a challenge, right? Let me share a little bit of, I'm quite sure the folks on this discussion, they're quite aware about it, but just wants to give a quick heads up in terms of where we are at the moment in terms of cybersecurity costs. So it's ranging around 6 trillion now annually, and they say that it'll probably grow 15% over the next 3 years. That's a significant value. And some of the cyber crimes can cost you significantly a lot, right? And it can even go up to around like 10.5 trillion by 2025 is what has been predicted. Why the traditional way of looking at it and where we are in terms of machine learning and advanced analytics, where data science, machine learning models come into effect is what we have seen is the new normal environment. I'll probably touch base a little bit more deeper when I go through the slides. What we have also observed is last 2 years, the ways of working have significantly changed. We were used to work in an environment where we work in a secure network on a local network, where we enforcing security around that has been quite easy. At the same time, now when COVID pandemic came into effect, it was noticed that most of the people, they didn't have a choice. So all of us have to start working from home. Even I've been in situations where offshore development centers, probably the most secure offshore development centers who handles some of the bank and financial data, they also ran out of options. They had to allow people to work from home. Yes, certainly end-to-end encryption, but working on VPNs. But still, at the same time, there was a significant growth of hackers. And hackers are growing sophisticated every day because they are also using quite a lot of machine learning. They're also using advanced analytics algorithms. They're also using much more human power because the reason is the current economic macro and micro environments are not really helping any of people. So everybody's looking at how to make quick money, and hackers hack, and they also provide solutions and sometimes for a fee, right? So hence, the perimeter defense is inadequate now, as I've said, because most of us, even now, even after the COVID pandemic and all the lockdowns are done, most of the folks are not returning to office, and it has been the case across globally. And been working with large consultancy firms across last 2.5 to 3 years now. Even for them, they are not returning back to their office. The options are being given for people to work from home. But if you're working on data analytics or big data or any other systems that use secure data, there's always there is a potential that your security will be breached, because yes, you can still go ahead and lock your screens, disable print screening, disable all your USB ports and everything. But when you're working from home through a terminal or something, you can obviously take a photograph of it where you can't stop it, right? So there is no 100% foolproof way to keep bad actors out. And what we have also observed throughout is that most of the threats are now coming within the environment, within your network. There was a time that it was coming from outside. You make sure you have your parameter defense put adequately, but now everything is outside. I'll probably do a little bit of a deep dive in terms of some of these areas also in time to come. So coming back into the cybersecurity challenges in the new normal environment, where I'm speaking about new normal is the last 2 years, because throughout my career working across multiple MNCs and large bank and financial services, global Fortune 100 companies across. What I've seen is the way that we have looked at cybersecurity at that point and way we are looking at now has significantly changed, because we are talking about terabytes of data. And how do we really use that data, and how do we make sure that we identify some of these threats that are getting generated internally at a proactive fashion. As I've said, the landscape has changed quite significantly, because previously the assets, the environment, including even the adversaries who have been adversaries for cybersecurity and everything, was from external, but they used to work in the internal environment. And even our arsenal of tooling and everything was internal. As a result, what has now moved to is that all our assets, now most of our services and everything is in a cloud environment. Even all the bank and financial services, they have migrated into private clouds or maybe internal or external clouds environments. And the environment's access needs to be granted for individuals over maybe an encrypted channel, but still you will never know where you are working on and how do you really secure the endpoint that you need to. The adversaries, as I've said, that before it has been all external, but they used to come and work internally. Unfortunately, now it's all external because all your data, all your services are residing outside your local network now. Most of the organizations, because of the new normal environment, so everything is outside. And even the arsenal that what we have, because it's a cloud security and it's beyond your local network, now everything resides outside, so you have to depend on quite a lot with the external factors. As part of this issue, what has resulted us now is that it has created an immense complexity for us, and we would require an increased list of skills for individuals to look after. And what we have also seen is like there's a lot of unfilled positions. So basically, there's more threat that has been created through cybersecurity breaches. So you would obviously require a lot of people to look at it. Maybe you are doing log analytics, but log analytics would give you insights for some of the anomalies, but predictive threat protection and all that is not available. And if you really have to go down that path, you may have to have a lot of skills and a lot of people and a lot of complexity, a lot of network infrastructure and bandwidth for you to do it. If I talk a little bit about the past versus now, where I've been talking about 2 years before and where we are now, before the pandemic really came and hit us. I was in Sri Lanka at that time, and 2020 March, when we went for a lockdown, I believe I still remember the date, it was March 8th, where in fact Sri Lanka went into a lockdown. There were many organizations across. The organization where I was attached to at that time was a large MNC. We had offices around most of the countries. Even we didn't have a plan and a process for people to work from home and make sure that all our threat protection is being implemented, and there's a way for us to predict threats. There's a way for us to do analysis of what people are doing. How do we really find certain intersections, certain groups, certain buckets where we see that there are issues around that. And given that the good old days where we were residing and where we were focusing on is, as I've said, all the adversaries are from outside. We also tend to keep all the adversaries out. So maybe they have to come in and then do the work and move out. There was a time that we trust anyone inside, because the reason is it was on a local network, so people physically come into office. Even though they might access a private cloud, they will still come into a network within your control. So you make sure that nobody's allowed to access it, right? The amount of data that we are working on has also expanded gradually. So there's a significant amount of data. There's a significant amount of access that people do internally. Where are we now is adversaries are still outside. So there's no change, but the same adversaries are also inside now. Why? Because we are accessing most of our environments from outside. This even applies for bank and financial services, and even healthcare, where a lot of data protection services are activated, but still they are being allowed to access outside because most of the employees are working from outside. What has resulted? No longer keep the bad guys outside. They are also inside also now because we are working from outside. What does it result? We get lots of alerts or data through our, maybe from our firewalls, maybe from our threat protection tooling that we have. Now what has happened is, because when people were accessing data inside, we were not quite worried about, because all the parameters were there and the amount of alerts and the data that we had to look at was very minimum, because we were more focusing on the threats and cybersecurity breaches that's coming out from outside to the network, because most of our critical systems are working within the network. Critical data was residing within the network and it was never been exposed to outside onto unsecure networks. Now it has changed a lot. You are going to get a lot of alerts. You are going to get a lot of data, and you are going to run into a lot of difficulties in doing it. What do we really, in terms of more security challenges? We are not just who's trying to come in, knowing who is going out and trying to go out also needs to be looked at now. As I've said, that the global workforce now around 60 to 65% are working from remote locations or working from home due to many challenges. Before, it's just keeping a track and making sure that the data that what we have is being only looked at people who are trying to come into your local network. But now it is a point, because all of us are accessing critical systems from outside, the critical data from outside. We now have to look at not only who are trying to access in from outside, we need to now look at more carefully in terms of people who are trying to access things outside. We also need to know and what, yet get lots of data alerts again, as I've said. Most of the large corporates, they have the SIEM, where security information and event management helps, yes, but they can also be quite complex to deploy. Tuning takes a lot of time and can be really expensive, limited capacity, leave little room to run ad hoc queries and advanced analytics on top of that. There are a lot of tooling and a lot of softwares are available, which is like a black box, you run it, but the customizing based on your bespoke requirements has become significantly an overhead for the workforce. And also the better use of data, what is be getting generated is being concealed inside, and you won't be able to expose it to run preventive analysis queries, and also use some advanced analytics and data science on top of it for organizations to sustain and understand and analyze the outgoing and incoming data security breaches. So what is the lingering question around today? What or who is in my network infrastructure, data or critical applications? What is traversing on my network today? Is there a threat in my network or cybersecurity breach? These are a couple of important questions where all the security folks are facing these days, and I'm sure all the organizations are burning night oil trying to solve these problems every time, because a lot of organizations do tend to use tooling that are not been very bespoke, or preventive measures are being put in place. There are organizations who invest on it, but how do we really put advanced analytics and machine learning into it is the most important aspect of it. Major challenges in identifying threats today. Why do we have to apply analytics? It's all about visibility. Sorry, guys, I'm taking the call today from home, so I have 2 dogs. They've been barking here. Apologies for that. Major challenges in terms of identifying threats today is we don't have the right visibility. We don't have the right context for it. Because with visibility, you need to have the right context. And the context is always not very straightforward to look at it. If you look at just data, you're not going to get the right level of context. If you look at the analytics log files, you're not going to get the right context because you need to run maybe algorithms on top of it to make sure your content gives you the right context. At the same time, you need to have the right inventory and access and identity for us to make sure that this data is available for our analytics work. I want to just quickly give a little bit of a definitions around what is machine learning, what is data analytics, and how does all these three things bridge together. I'm sure everyone knows about it, but just wants to spend a little bit, maybe a couple of seconds in terms of refreshing our minds across. Machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence. Basically, we use computation, the ability to learn. So we have supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So basically, most of the data that we process through, sometimes we have a test and a control set where we used to train the data set and test the data set across. So this also applies for any security log files, network security, or any other applications around where you can train the data sets and also look at some of the context that comes out of those data sets. What does data analytics? So data analysis is a process of a more granular level. So advanced analytics has been applied for data. So we inspect, cleanse, and transform the modeling data. So how do we really use all three together? Machine learning has a quickly adapted in cybersecurity for its potential automation decisions. As I've said, that the threats now that's been getting created in the environment is quadrupled because everybody's trying to access the critical systems from outside. We need to identify who are the bad guys and who are the good guys, who really needs to access the data, who really don't need to access the data. Finding that distinguish difference between them would be quite tricky and quite challenging. That is where the machine learning algorithms come in and the artificial intelligence come in, where you can actually look at and train the models to make sure that you identify these anomalies, where in next couple of slides, I'll probably take some time to run through some of those algorithms that we may be able to use. It's quite straightforward because even there are enough and more data analytics data sets at Kaggle. So even if somebody's interested, they will be able to download some of the data sets and run them by themselves and create a small model and then run it through and identify how do you really cluster them and identify some of those anomalies and create some triggers across. Just want to spend a little bit more time in terms of data analytics to security analytics. There's a huge similarity between data analytics and security analytics. The reason I wanted to spend a little bit more time around this is more or less because what is the significant difference between the data analytics and security analytics? Both are systematic computational analysis of data or statistics. So a lot of machine learning, AI, and advanced analytics, the outcomes of machine learning and data analytics is advanced analytics, where we put it across statistical models and try to identify. So in both contexts, it's computational analysis of data or statistics. In data analysis, it's more towards discovering and interpretation and communicating a meaningful pattern. So that's where it is coming from in data. Organizations may also apply analytics to data for descriptive, predictive, and improved business performance. So this is the most common use. So if I just give you a couple of examples in terms of, though it might not be directly applicable for this discussion, but just to share a couple of examples, most of the large, even retailers would probably use a lot of data analytics now to identify customers who are getting churned, who might get churned in future, to identify the patterns, and then making sure that they identify that this customer is going to get churned, fall out from your retail chain. How do you make sure that you secure? So it's a similar approach that you would take when you're analyzing your security logs or anything. You identify potential threats. So when you identify potential threats, maybe it's similar to retail also, as I've explained. So the customer is shopping as usual, but how do we really identify whether the customer will fall out from your customer base, right? So similarly in security analytics also, there may be an internal user who has been working well and not doing any breaches, but how do we make sure you identify different behaviors through data analytics and advanced analytics using machine learning algorithms, and identify that threat beforehand? So instead of allowing and making sure that the breach happens, you take preventive measures to stop it. So the context in terms of application of data analytics, even in security analytics, is the same that what you're going to put through. The data that you're going to use may be a little different. Maybe it is log files or network traffic or anything related to application logs. But in data analytics, in the business context, they might use the transactional information, your supply, then maybe your buying patterns, maybe the times that you have been visiting the stores likewise. But however, the outcome is to improve business performance, because even if you have a breach in your data security, your business performance is going to go down, because the reason is you might not be able to operate yourself the way you are. Instead, you may have to incur additional costs to prevent it. Maybe there will be additional fines. Similarly, in the business performance of a simple analytic solution that you deploy, if you have a lot of churn customers, obviously your revenue and your bottom line is going to get impact. So hence, it's a similar approach. In data analytics, it includes data collection, organization, and storage, and tools, techniques used for analysis. So again, as I've said, it's a similar approach, but in terms of in security analytics, it's more or less like automated analysis of data, enabling detecting anomalies, even cyber attack in scale. So this is very important, because the reason is in data analytics, most of the people, what they do is they collect the data, they organize them, they will store it, and they will use tools and techniques of machine learning and algorithms to uncover certain patterns, meaningful patterns in data for decision making, business decision making. Similarly, in security analytics, most of the analysis that we run are automated analysis using machine learning algorithms. This will allow us to detect anomalies, but even large cyber attacks in scale, because there are a couple of examples I'll give you a little later around that, where you understand certain behavioral changes in your access data, and then you probably will be able to take significant preventive measures. And sometimes what I have also observed is, as I've said, that some of the predefined tooling might not help you to do this, but if you, as a cybersecurity or a network security specialist, you'll be able to simply run a Python code, and then use a existing algorithm or library and cluster them and identify patterns of anomalies very quickly, instead of going through lines on lines of data, and gamified dashboards would also sometimes not give you the right level of understanding. So it's important that the understanding about machine learning and statistical approaches have been brought in, but couple of years before and where we are now has significantly changed. The amount of coding that you really need to do is being very less. There are tools or algorithms that are built in where you can extend those libraries and use it. So some of them are quite straightforward, some of them are complex, but there's a significant bespoke use of advanced analytics in security analysis. So we'll talk a little bit more in a couple of minutes. Just wants to share a little bit about this data analytics maturity model, where you have the descriptive analytics, talks about what happened. So when you run advanced analytics machine learning models on your log files or network access or application security log files or any other related data, there are multiple diagnostics that you probably come across. You can run descriptive analytics models on your data to identify what has happened, and this will probably give you a good 50,000 feet view to quickly identify what has happened. Sometimes your tools and your existing tools might give you the same color, but as I've said that you can probably write simple data sets and simple training data set and a testing data set and train the models and keep it and then quickly run this. You'll probably get a quick descriptive analytics. You can probably match it against what is going to get, what are you going to get out of those two different approaches and understand what has happened quite well. This Gartner analytics model actually gives you a value and a difficulty. So basically, it's like quite a significant way to look at it, and a lot of people actually use this even with the business analytics that what we use. And I'm sure that it can also be used in security analytics also, because it's the same context as I've explained in a couple of slides before. If you really want to understand why did it happen, you need to run a diagnostic analytics. So how does this come into effect is you may have trained your data sets in multiple machine learning algorithms to understand the descriptive data, to understand your history data set, to see why certain diagnostics descriptive analysis came across and what is the diagnostic out of that. So you have a testing data set which you have tested. You exactly know what has happened also. So it's easier for us to apply the same patterns across using multiple machine learning models to understand the context well, descriptive, and then diagnostic. Then you can use both of these two to do a predictive analytics. So this journey of doing this is not very difficult. It's quite easy. As I've said that you can use a couple of sample Kaggle data sets for you to run through some of them. The only thing is sometimes a lot of people come across when they do advanced analytics and machine learning models, the challenge they come across is finding the right distinguish between descriptive, diagnostic, and predictive analytics. How do you really carve it out? How do you identify your test data set? How do you identify your training data sets for this log file analysis and all that is something that you may have to spend a little bit more time to understand. Maybe in future, if there's an interest, definitely we can run some live demos and explain to you also with some examples. But it may be quite technical, but happy to do so in future. Because the reason is there may be a lot of scenarios that some of the data points must be missing. So how do you really compensate them into an algorithm and do a right level of diagnostic? Once when you have this descriptive and diagnostic outputs and input data and the models available, what you can do is you can actually run these things automatically and do a predictive analytics and set up some triggers in terms of some alerts across where certain predictions come across. So I'll give a simple example in common terms. If you look at a supply chain analysis of a business, if you wanted to in dire times like this, if you have 6,000 suppliers, and if you wanted to identify and understand which suppliers would bring you the highest risk in terms of fulfilling your orders, how do you make sure that you mitigate it and make sure those items are available? Is a predictive analytics that you do to identify what is the risk that is associated by looking at a lot of features. So there will be feature engineering that will happen when you do the diagnostics models, and then you'll get the predictive analytics outcomes. So similar approach can be taken into analyzing the security data, and you can have a good predictive models built on top of it to give you the right level of analytics. The most difficult, the most optimized part of it is prescriptive analytics, because you need to analyze the three steps that you came across, that is descriptive, diagnostic, and predictive analysis through analytics models, and then understand retrospectively what was your prescriptive analytics. So typically prescriptive analysis are quite difficult, but it is the actual business value that people would have it, because instead of you bringing the problem into the table, you also have a data-driven approach using advanced analytics and data science methods to give you a prescriptive analytics. Typically, the prescriptive analytics are, there may be multiple choices that comes out on a prescriptive analytics to say that these are the prescriptive analytics, but it also depends on from business context to business context. So you need to clearly understand how do you really carve it out and become a prescriptive analytics, because sometimes you may have certain tools, certain applications, certain processes that is by design, right? So you're defining a prescriptive analytics for a data science to a security analytics would be a quite challenging and a daunting task, but it is not that it is not possible, because if you look at it, most of the antivirus engines, they actually run a prescriptive analytics also. Sometimes if you look at it, if there's a file, they will run it through and they'll give you a prescriptive analytics output. But for that, you need to run quite a lot of advanced analytics, machine learning algorithms across to give you the right hit rate. If I talk a little bit around benefits, okay. Sorry, let me make this one. Yeah.
Govinda, that's a poll which you are running. Sorry if it interrupted.
No worries. No worries. No worries. So let me, now we talked in the previous slide about what is the approach that you can probably do to analyze, to adapt some of these advanced analytics approaches into your data security. And okay, you go through the trouble of doing it, and say you go through the trouble of implementing that in an organization, right? It can be a novel experience for an organization, but what is the underlying benefit that that we are going to bring in, right? Because most of the advanced analytics solutions and data science approaches that you bring in, there's a misconcept of, okay, you bring that in, are we replacing a human that's who is working, right? That has been the case maybe 5, 7, 8 years before, but now it is not the case, to be very honest. And most of the engagements, even I have worked across multiple businesses and multiple domains, the approach is not about full-time employer savings or making sure that what is your next financial year cut, right? Are you going to depend on a tool and then run it? No, it's not the case, right? Most of the people, if you look at it, they are engaged in mundane tasks, right? Because the reason is that you have to manually go through. Sometimes you have to depend on gamified dashboards, but you don't get the prescriptive analysis. You will have to look at multiple previous scenarios. You may have to really depend on a tool, what is going to prescribe and what is going to prevent it from happening. And how sometimes most of it might come too late, because you may already have a data breach, because now you're trying to do basically a firefighting situation, because it has come and landed and the bomb has exploded. So you now have to do that, right? So how can you really spend productive and a more quality effort to do this, is making sure that you use these advanced analytics approaches to analyze your data, that is going to help you to uncover and discover more insights and help your job to identify some of these threats beforehand and making sure that they are being prevented. So you do the right justice, but at the same time, you build up a good knowledge base with data, right? Because what I have personally also seen is if an organization has 1 terabyte of actual customer data and say some critical application, the amount of access data for that the business data that you have is going to be 3 or 4 or maybe 5 times or 10 times more. It's always more, because the amount of applications that's going to access it from outside internally and the individuals that's going to access it is going to be significantly higher. So if you look at it, the data that is getting generated through some of these logs and everything is going to surpass your actual business data. Are we really using that data to benefit the business and add value to the business is something that you have to recall and look at it, right? So I think it gives a different meaning, and sometimes the tools and the other legacy system that is being implemented for some of these, right, will help you to overcome that. But where is that extra mile and where can you really deliver value and learn something out of it? So it will help you to do that is where the advanced analytics and machine learning algorithms that will come into real effect, right? So if we really look at from individual's point of view, when you are going to spend a little bit of time learning them, you're going to spend a little bit of time understanding them. Maybe you may have to take up some courses to build up your skills. But what is going to help us is fresh up our skill talents to perform tasks, which is higher priority, because it's easier for you to prioritize your work that you're going to do, because it will help you to do predictive analysis. So as I've said that in the business context, on the simple example that I gave you in terms of supply chain, if you have higher risk, you attend for those alerts. But yes, you attend to those alerts, but that alert is generated on an instance, right? But that will not give you the right color in terms of what has happened for the alerts that has generated before on similar context, right? That is the way that the machine learning and the advanced analytics approaches would give you. So maybe all the high alerts that you see, maybe out of that, say there are 10,000 alerts, but actually the ones that you really need to focus immediately, maybe 100 alerts that you have. How do you really identify those based on the previous data, maybe how it has generated? So say that there is a data access breach, right? But in order to identify the pattern that it has come to that point is something that the data analysis will do, the data analytics will do, right? The advanced analytics machine learning models will identify certain patterns. So say that there are 10 steps that has been taken, maybe the same security alert has been generated with 2 steps, right? Maybe though it is being generated, post alert being generated, nothing has happened beyond that. Maybe some of them things have happened, right? So what does advanced analytics help you to do is it will give you predictions saying that out of these alerts, these 100 are the ones that are most critical, because based on the history data on your training data sets, it will tell you, okay, this is the pattern that a common intruder is going to take, and this would have the highest risk of breaching, right, if you don't take action. So this will help you to make sure you attend more productively and also upskill your talent, so you'll probably progress towards it, right? Also, one approach that what I have also particularly seen is better utilization of in-house skills, right? Because this will open up a different paradigm and a different space for individuals also. One other thing is the job satisfaction, because you're not going to only look at the dashboards and gamified dashboards and do things, but you're going to do new things. You're going to learn out of it. You're going to do predictive analysis and prescriptive analysis that will help the business as well as your knowledge growth, right? Also, the outcomes would be prepare your team to adapt more advanced cognitive technologies in ML and AI, right? Because which is a very fast moving area, right? One of the other things is most of the people, right, when we go and even propose for businesses, right, forget about cybersecurity and network security or anything, right? When we go and propose solutions, the common question that we ask is, can we buy an analytic solution directly, right? No, you can't, right? Because there are platforms and infrastructure or the frameworks are available, but it will be very difficult for somebody to build an analytic solution to bespoke your requirement, right? So basically, it's no one fits for all solutions. So obviously, if you are going down the path of using advanced analytics and machine learning for cybersecurity, it is important for you to learn the fundamentals. It is important for you to do your own homework, and also it is important to spend a little bit more time in terms of understanding, because there is enough and more resources are available in data sets like Kaggle. The millions and millions of network records are available. You can probably hypothesize something and then write your own code and look at it also. There are some tooling already available which are like allows you to do graphical analysis using advanced analytics algorithms, but I don't really encourage people to go down that path, because if you really want to learn the insights out of it, the best way to approach it is use some of these data sets and then run some of this code, and it will probably help you, right? The other important aspect is typically there's upfront investment for return that may take time to prove, right? Because the reason is if you use a solution, you will directly use a solution, but you are going to end up in terms of a scope, right? But if you can probably go beyond that scope if you actually understand the context. If I just again go back to this this slide, right? Sometimes using a tool will only give you the descriptive analytics, right? Because it's easier for you to give a descriptive analytics because there are very simple like algorithms like k-means. You can run it and cluster the data and then find out what is actually happening on descriptive level, right? But in even diagnostics, yes, there are algorithms that have been built into tools, right? But predictive and prescriptive are the most important ones that will help an organization in terms of identifying and giving the solutions, right? As I've always said, right, identifying the issue is easier, but giving the prescription to solve it might not be straightforward. When I talk about prescription, it's not about kicking that user out of the network or taking the next step, right? It's all about making sure that you look at millions and millions of records to look at it. So if I again give you a simple example, apart from data security, right? If you have to do a forecasting, right? You say you wanted to order something for a retail store, right? You want to do a forecasting. You can't just look at the data for last 6 weeks and do a forecasting, right? You may have to look at lot of data points like features, right? Your seasonality, you may have to look at availability, you may have to hypothesize quite a lot. So you need to keep a hypothesis register to do that. So your prescriptive analytics are being built based on your previous data. What is its patterns? Based on your analysis, your predictive analysis that you have brought in, right? So this will definitely help. And this is not something that, as I've said, that you don't need to basically be designated to do this, right? Because if you're doing log analysis, you can probably download the CSV, write your own code and run it and look at it. What is your prescriptive analysis for this, right? So once when you do it, then automatically the organizations will start adapting it because they will see the value out of it, right? So that's why in my previous slide, I've said that skill set building is quite helpful. And even if you are at a level that you have a team under you, giving them that objectives, learning paths in terms of building those skills is very helpful, because the change of mindset to look at it at a prescriptive way is the way to do it. And finding those issues and giving the prescriptive solutions are going to be quite easy in terms of approaching this, right? So again, coming back into some of the key aspects, right? If you are to run a run a successful analytics, right? Immaterial, whether it's a business data or your security data or what, right? People is the most important aspect, right? You need to have the right skill set. You need to have the right people. You need to have the people who are inquisitive enough to look at the data, not from the content basis, but on the context basis to identify patterns, right? Your data is the most critical part, the second most important thing. If you don't have the data, you will never even be able to do a descriptive or a preventive or prescriptive solution, right? Through analytics, right? Because you need to have enough and more data. So if I give a just simple example, sometimes to do a forecasting in retail organizations, right? To do a simple forecasting for next week, typically you may have to run cycles of 800, 900 million rows of simulations, right? That's the amount of like you may not have that level of data points, but you may simulate those data points and run it, right? That is how system will learn. So that's why the predictive and prescriptive models, it can give you different variations. So it's a multi-dimensional matrix that you're going to create. So you need to have the data to facilitate it. If you don't have the data, you have to simulate the data, and even to simulate the data, it needs to have the basically the scope of that data. Obviously, you need to have the platform. When I talk about the platform, if you are to run large analytics algorithms, it's a highly computational power is required, but there is opportunity. Even the current systems that we use, it helps us to run it even small analytics. So if somebody is interested to do it, to download a Kaggle data set of maybe there are data sets around 100 million records, you can still download it. You can still run it on even in a platform like Azure on a free subscription. Also, you can use it even in AWS. It is available. So and sometimes when you prove some of these things even in your local environments, these are the opportunities that creates for you to take it to the organizations, prove and showcase that what is the capabilities of some of these things that you can bring into the bespoke table, and allows you that bespoke capabilities to give that multi-dimensional view for the individuals. I'll spend a little bit time in terms of some of the algorithms that you can use. So there are regression-based models that you can use it. So basically to analyze some of the user access, so basically you plot it, you run a regression-based model, then you plot it against the number of servers week of the year. Then it's easier for you to find out those unusual variances on the servers that is accessed. So these algorithms are very simple to be running. Even you can install an Anaconda environment in your local machine and get a data set and run it. So it gives you, so it's easier for you to identify the regression lines in terms of each user, and then find out those common patterns across, identify users who have high positive and high negative slopes to find users with unusual activities. So basically, you plot all your users, you plot all your servers in a regression model, and then you identify who are the people who are having unusual activities. So basically, as I've told you, these are all preventive measures, right? Because sometimes if you look at a timestamp of maybe one slice of a timestamp, you might not see this. But if you look at a timestamp of last 3 months or last 6 months data, identifying some of these are very easy because people are smart, tools are smart, automation engines are smart now, right? So it's very easy to identify when you run a regression plot to identify some of these anomalies very quickly, and then provide solutions for those anomalies have become also quite easy for you. So these are some of the ways that you can quite easily identify these anomalies quite quickly. There are things that user behavior models. So again, coming back into it, based on the historic behavioral profiles for each user, servers access, and the network access, the geographical information of logins and all that, it's easier for you to identify users' behavioral patterns, right? This is a multi-feature generation. So as I've told you that there is an entire feature list that goes with it to disable, reduce false alarms, right? So this is again that the coming back into the discussion that I shared with you guys. there may be 500 critical alerts that comes across, but how do you really identify out of those critical alerts, what is the context behind it, right? So it's the content is the alerts will generate based on the content, right? But what is the context? Yeah, as this is being a common pattern across. If you come across this common pattern, are you really going to make sure that this somebody is going to breach your security and access that, right? Is it the pattern that somebody has used? So basically, there may be data points that has already been created based on some historic patterns, right? So it will overlap and then identify some of those behavioral models. So some of this tooling is already available. Somebody might say, okay, for this specific tool where you can buy it for this X amount, it is available, right? Yes, it is available. But however, unfortunately, sometimes when you wanted to go for prescriptive models, this data cannot be taken out. So obviously, writing a simple code and plotting them on a diagram will help you to do it quickly. And getting it to the business and making them aware that why you have only selected out of this 5,000 alerts, why you have only selected this 100 alerts is easy to explain. And sometimes if it takes a lot of time for you to do that, it will not come and hit you badly because you're going to attend to the most important alerts out of those critical alerts, right? Then we also do PCA scoring. Again, it's a behavioral matrix where you plot it across and keep it. Once you plot it across, then you do a decision diagram across your algorithms. So you have a training data set which trains you to run a PCA. Then you have a multi-dimensional principal dimensions. Then it runs through the test vectors and reconstruct the test vectors. Then you find an anomaly score. And then based on those anomaly scores, you can actually identify what are those real anomalies that you're going to come across, right? Again, these are like some of those oversampling PCAs where you run it and then you identify those anomaly clusters. Probably in a future session where we can spend some time, we can actually run some of these codes on some of those network analysis data and give you those segregations to identify that these are the common issues that comes across. And this is how you wanted to identify duplicate items likewise, right? There are different methods that you can run it. It's simple ways to use it. Even R or Python would help you to do so. There are systems like recommendation system based models where you actually give like recommendations, right? This is a very common example. So basically, you rate alerts, right? And then based on those recommendations, it's easier for you to identify and then give you recommendations based on system-based models. So this is a typical example that I have put across on the LDAP and the Active Directory data. How does it actually plot it across and then moves across? So it's easier for you to identify it. We can probably in a future session, we'll be able to run it across in the actual code and then plot it across, guys. Again, in a graphical models, so a lot of people have had discussions. They talk about, okay, you are running machine learning algorithms, you are going to run advanced analytics models. Is it really going to give you that graphical view, or is it just going to give you that very granular view of, you know, the level of information that you require, right? There are more than enough libraries that's available for you to give that graphical views now. Not like the old days, you still have those libraries available. You can easily run those libraries and plot them across. So just to give a little bit of challenges and the solutions. So Fortune 100 companies leverage a lot of analytics in terms of cybersecurity risks now. Most of those are bespoke solutions, not that they are being used by tools. Sometimes they use tools to generate the logs that is required, but the outcomes of logs are being run through the actual machine learning models and advanced analytics tooling and statistical approaches, and take it forward and then analyze it at a more granular level, guys. Right. That's a quick recap in terms of how we can actually use advanced analytics and machine learning in terms of the data security and cybersecurity. Happy to take any of the questions that you guys have. And once again, apologies for my dogs because I've been connecting from home, guys. not been to office today. Happy to take any questions if you guys have.
Dominda, thank you very much for that enlightening presentation. We didn't hear the dog bark at all, right?
Oh, is it? Sorry.
We were wondering, why you keep saying your dog is in the background. See, we do have a couple of questions which have come from the participants to start off, right? And the first question has come from Hasita, who is also a member of the ISC2 Colombo chapter, and he's with London Stock Exchange, leading the compliance portfolio for the LSG group in Colombo. So his question is, he wants to get an opinion how a prospective hacker uses data analytics to make their hacks better. So it is like he's saying the other side of the coin.
No, I mean, it's a very, very valid question, right? Because the reason is there is always the other side of the story, right? Because you would probably do analytics with your own data to identify anomalies and patterns, right? Obviously, now what hackers would also do is they will use that data available. Maybe they may have hacked the system and they may have got all these log files and data, right? They will run algorithms across those and identify those anomalies, right? Where those anomalies are popping up, right? And because if you run a machine learning algorithm, as I've said, right, it gives you prescriptive, it gives you descriptive, it gives you solutions for it also, right? So when you run these algorithms, you will obviously understand, okay, what is the pattern of prescriptive analysis that you're going to get? What is the pattern of descriptive analysis that you're going to get, right? Based on the amount of features that you're going to bring in to identify those things, will make it a fact. So the hackers, what they do is they will also, now they have gone to the next level where they will also run advanced analytics models, and they will make sure that they avoid some of those anomalies. Because what would happen is, as I've told, that all the machine learning algorithms, what they do is they will learn, right? They will learn from your test data sets, which is commonly available. Even if it's an antivirus software, it will understand your anomalies, right? How do they understand the anomalies? Is based on the patterns, right? Those patterns are derived from the features that is extracted out of it. So when you, it's a very daunting and a difficult task for a hacker, because the reason is the amount of data that is going to be collective to do that prescription for your analysis will be very different for a data set that somebody else is having it, right? But this is something that we have commonly now come across. Even I have come across some articles, even IBM have published a white paper. I will share that with you guys. It's a nice article that they have released with regards to some of the security features around, where I was also doing a little bit of a due diligence around this topic. But there's always a good chance, but that doesn't, but you will probably have a better chance of preventing it, because the chances of that person having that exact context would be very less, right? That's why I always say that you might have tools to generate the data, but if you use the common algorithms and the approaches, the statistical approaches to identify these anomalies using a prescriptive model, then it becomes bespoke for your requirement, bespoke for you. Sometimes you do a little bit of a feature engineering and make sure you distinguish between some of those anomalies at a very particular point. So it's easier for you to understand those anomalies, even if the hacker takes the next steps to avoid some of those common anomalies which might generate. And I think the question is quite right, because some of those tools that's commonly available, they already use machine learning algorithms and data analytics to give you prescriptions, right? Now, what would happen is they might already be a common aspect, right? But common scenarios, they may have a separate set of feature database that they use to identify those prescriptive models. But if you keep on generating a prescriptive database based on your own logs, that will give you a separate feature list which is unique for your logs. That will make sure that it will help you. The tool will always give you, maybe it will give you 1,000 alerts across. But when you run your own logs with the regression analysis or a PCM or whatever, then you probably get a separate set of analysis results outside, where you derive out of those 500 alerts, you can actually identify the anomalies which are very specific for your network and bespoke.
Absolutely. So, I mean, thanks for those comments. How about any thoughts around the table There's a lot of knowledge and experience in this participation. So Hasita, do you want to comment anything on?
I'm actually interested to hear if anybody is using advanced analytics and machine learning so far at a bespoke level or a tooling level in terms of your cybersecurity and network security and data security.
Yeah.
Yeah, Taraka, hi, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah,
Hi,
I actually have a similar experience where the security analytics is most of the time, almost all the time is bespoke, because the standard tools doesn't work because our solutions are unique and the patterns are actually unique. So I've tried with Python, looking at memory and CPU stats and number of network connections, and did the Python small script to identify anomalies. And then again, one of the very important things that you mentioned is building the ecosystem for the application that you write to survive in the long run.
Yes.
So sharing the knowledge and building the knowledge base or the inventory within the team, and also planning that for about 5 or maybe more years is the key aspect of keeping that live and managing the risk, the issues that we might face in the cyberspace. And actually this small tool helped us to identify a couple of issues where the company was deploying new a stack of tools to generate and analyze logs and detect anomalous activities. So having a couple of items running on a single server, the test cases actually they tested was not anomalous, so they didn't find anything. But a couple of our servers started hitting the resource levels were highly utilized. So then that was the root cause for me to write this. So there we found it, what's actually causing and how to resolve it, and what's the best configurations to have these tools configure to run in the same environment. So
yeah,
that's.
So I mean, as an example, if you're using certain cloud frameworks like Azure, you can use Azure Synopsys Analytics, which is out of the box. The libraries are available, but you can simply write some notebooks on top of it and execute it and get some of this. I think Tarek, you clearly highlighted, because the predictive and prescriptive analysis is where it is really missing, and your bespoke requirements are really required, because descriptive and diagnostics, I have come across a lot of tooling that's available that is bespoke, that gives you that output, but that predictive and prescriptive are very much bespoke for your own environment. So I think it's a good step, and I'm really happy to hear that you guys are using it. And these days, I think even the folks who have been working, I mean, it's a next step for them, right? Because the world is heading towards a data-driven culture. Most of the organizations who have been into data and trying to uncover business value out of data really don't think a lot around data security and how they can really use that metadata to generate insights for it, right? So it's a really interesting area, and I'm really happy that Tarek, that you guys are like well ahead.
Yeah, and one more test case, the use case, a use case that we tried was did another script to identify sensitive data in huge log files. So that actually enabled us to remove this unwanted data or sensitive data in log files that's visible to outside world. And doing that actually gave me a lot of insights how we can use that to create profiling.
Oh, I see. Yes.
So yeah, that's one more input that I could give along the same lines.
Yes. Awesome. I think even Sujit, the Sri Lankan context also, given that the new data protection bill has come across, I think this is a very interesting topic. It's going to be for future, because a lot of organizations do collect a lot of data, and where does the PII data lies, and whether you have the right level of anonymization that's been applied, and in the event if there's a data breach, how do you really take it forward? I think you guys are really well ahead of the game. I'm happy to hear Tarek on that.
All right, great. And I think there's a lot of pointers here, right, in terms of technology, in terms of data being used. And I just quickly want to take on the next question, which has come from Amila. This is where Palo Alto represents Palo in Sri Lanka. Right. So this is actually going to stem from the observation which Taraka made in terms of PII data. So when we typically look at data analytics, we always say that analytics is used to bring business benefits. So most of the time we talk about use cases which will enhance the top line, bottom line of cost management. But on the other hand, we are also saying cybersecurity shall also use data analytics, advanced analytics, and which is integrated with AI, machine learning, and so on and so forth. But most of the time, when you look at security, people look at security from a cost perspective. It is a cost to the company, but never a top line revenue generator per se, unless it is a security company which is doing this as a core business. So, the question is, do we focus only on business data, or do we also, emphasize to the business that they need to analyze the security data as well?
Yeah. So I'll give you a simple example, Sujit, right? Now the hackers and the people who really use this data, they're not actually really behind your data, right? The insights that your data gets created, right? There's a whole market segment in the world now. If you look at retail, there's a whole market segment called RMN, Retail Media Network, right? So you actually sell your insights of your data to large manufacturers, large organizations, like even people like Nestle, Unilever, and all that. They actually buy the insights of data. They don't actually buy the data, they buy the insights of the data, right? So if it's not about somebody accessing your data and just taking 1 or 2 lines of records, which somebody might think, okay, it doesn't contain any PII data, it may sometimes contain some logs or some data that is really lying across, right? It is not actually. The people who are really accessing your data is going to get down the line. You're not only going to lose money on your data breach, but your potential new business income for future is going to get lost for you. So it's a lot of large organizations now who use data analytics. They actually build a separate arm for these media networks. So you sell that insight to the business. And why it is so valuable is, if you look at it, right, if you may run an advertisement on the TV, but there's no certain way for you to collect that information to give you 100% saying that yes, you had this much of viewers, right? But if I give a simple context in terms of retail, right, the amount of data that retail business actually generates gives you a real value, right? You have the age, you know exactly how many members are in the family, you know the geography, you know everything about that customer, right? And then the context of the data that you're going to get out of it is really valuable. So hence, if a business is only looking at their core business and generating advanced analytics and not really securing their data, they're not only losing money in terms of losing this data and paying for a data breach on a PII or something. For them, potentially, that data is going to build a separate multi-million-dollar business for them in future, which they are going to lose that opportunity. So rather, they think about the future and secure that data not only as a data breach, but it's an investment that they're doing it for their future business. Obviously, you can recoup that because that business is going to pay you much more money than just the core business that you are going to run. So I think that is the way you really have to look at it, to be honest.
I'm going to intervene here and talk about another question which has come up, right? This again has come from Hasita.
Okay.
Hasita is saying, I mean, the thought processes are the same, right? He's looking at the other side of the coin all the time.
No, he should. Yes.
Yeah. So the point he's saying is, on one side, we are saying we run analytics and people are selling the insights. Now he's asking a similar question, right? Do you think that the output of your advanced analytics program can be shared as threat intelligence with industry peers who are using the same tech stack, who are using the same, the same tech stack? Not everyone will have the required resources, people, historical data, etc., to run full-fledged.
You can actually commercialize it. You can actually commercialize it. That's what I'm saying, right? So people actually don't, businesses actually don't look at this at that aspect, right? If you have, like, I in fact actually gave you an example about a particular business use case, right? But what people, the business needs to look at is how can you really, you are going to invest quite a lot on your network tooling, cybersecurity and everything. And the logs that you're going to create are merely, people think that, okay, you're creating those logs because you wanted to make sure you protect your environment, protect your data. But have anybody gone to the next level thinking about, can I really commercialize this data, right? There are many organizations who actually buy not the data, they actually buy the context out of it. If you can prove that you have run the right level of algorithms, the context can be proved, your prescriptive models using a test and a control data set can be verified, there is a significant value for it, because you can simulate the data, but that will never be similar to your actual data. So this is a different business paradigm, and I know that some of the organizations in Sri Lanka is now looking for it, not on the security data, but on the business data. But this is a different business vertical where people actually can utilize and recoup that money and actually generate a separate business line for their as a separate business line, Sujit.
Absolutely.
So you really have to think out of the box.
Correct. And I think there is an opportunity to make use of your security data and monetize it. Guys, I mean, I would like to, invite all of you to unmute, maybe, open your cameras and talk, ask questions, or share a comment, share a view. Please. Amal, Taraka, Upul, Hasita, Rusiru. I mean, I'm just not taking attendance, but I'd like to, hear from you guys.
No, so not a question again, but just to thank Dominda for those answers. I was actually thinking in lines of say for example, we heard a lot about bespoke solutions. So practically, when you go to your board and try to pitch these ideas in, that was the line I was thinking. Will they ask, okay, do we really need a bespoke solution, or can't we just get the information from the other party who's who is obviously not a competitor, but a peer who is willing to share. So like Dominda said, yeah, it's a possibility, a commercial possibility, as well as from a threat intelligence as a community. That's a good way for the community to grow, as well as the cybersecurity community, sharing threat intelligence. That was the line that I was looking at. But like Dominda said, it's a lucrative business, because if you take LSEG, Refinitiv, who is part of LSEG now, is all about selling data, making money out of data insights. So yeah.
So I mean, Hasita, because normally what would happen is every time you go to the board and say that we would require $250,000 for this security tool, right?
Yep.
But if there's a pitch that is also being made, if that tool actually gives you additional data points, it's really good. And if you really pitch it in such a way that yes, we are going to take this, use it for 2 years, but the data that's going to come out is going to commercialize in such a way to recoup this maybe in another 3 years time, I think that would be a viable pitch. We can do it. And some of these bespoke solutions, as I've mentioned, they're not going to cost us a lot in terms of infrastructure, to be honest, right? Because some of these frameworks are already available, and most of these frameworks or the libraries are commonly available. They are open source, right? So it's actually, I look at it in two different aspects. These days, retaining people and making sure their talent growth, academic growth in terms of how they can really scale up. They will also be interested, because rather than they are doing their daily tasks, coming and then looking at log files and trying to do something through the tool. Instead, they will learn something out. So they will also see that there's a career prospect there. Every day they're learning something out of it. Commercializing, so you're going to bring additional dollars to the business, and maybe out of that you can reinvest and then get additional tooling to generate additional metadata points, which will give you better insights. So that's
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the pitch that people need to look at it. But I'm actually happy to see that there are large organizations within Sri Lanka also has started doing this. So it's going to be a potential business stream for a lot of people. Otherwise, if you talk about cybersecurity and network security, it's all about cost that people talk about for the tooling and for the resources.
Yeah, I'll just share one or couple of tips that I use to make my life easy when doing that tool. Most of the time I started using the 95th percentile, the standard number of standard deviations. If a particular metric goes beyond that, you set up the alert instead of looking at all the alerts. So you save a lot of time, and never thought of commercializing or doing a product using that, because that, yeah, at that time it was not the case. But that was one way that it made life easy for us not to look at every alert.
Absolutely. So I just want to share a thought as well. If you recall, there was a poll which I published. Can analytics help build resilience? Right? The survey results, I mean, we had 81% of the people say yes, and 19% said no. But if you look at the World Economic Forum, an update a couple of months ago, they are talking about digital transformation. And that transformation includes zero trust framework. So you're talking about endpoints, you're talking about network architectures, you're talking about workloads, all of them generating different types of alerts, security alerts. So when you're trying to build a business which has to be resilient, you've got to depend on that underlying information, which are your security alerts, to understand or even predict using artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, to anticipate at what point in time you probably may get even breached or probably have an internal insider threat materializing and transforming into a what do you call a compliance issue. Right? So I see that this session has brought in definitely an opportunity where people can monetize using the log data. Right. And earlier, I think it was more limited to business use cases, but I think the security data, which is only used for internal purposes, but now that intelligence can be definitely shared as threat intel with peers, not probably competing, but on a collaboration manner, right? So if we don't have any other questions or any closing thoughts, I would like to take this into a wrap-up mode now. Any closing thoughts, Govinda, before we?
Yes. So Sujit, thank you very much, and I'm really interested to hear that there are a lot of folks who are really interested in terms of it, and I believe that there is a lot of value spending time a bit in terms of learning a little bit around this. And I've come across a lot of folks who have started learning and using business analytics. And I saw that Hasita has also posted a very valid point. There's not a very significant difference between business data and the security data, right? It needs to be looked at the same weightage, and it needs to be looked at the same value. And I've experienced, and I've foreseen, and I've worked in organizations where actually both data has been commercialized and sold, even not only for their own benefit, but commercialize the data on data as a service, right? So thank you very much, Sujit, and hopefully maybe in a future session we can actually demonstrate some of these log files on an actual demo, and then run some code and show in terms of how do you really implement some of this, and probably take it forward in a future session, Sujit. Thank you once again for all of you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm confirming the next future session. We are going to decide on the date offline. Here's why I'm telling you we're going to do the future session. I also ran a poll asking how many of them would be interested on live demo. 87% of the participants confirmed that they want a live demo. There you go, Dominder. Right? So
Yes.
the ball is in your court for you to come back to me and tell me when you're going to do this for the membership, right?
I'll connect with you offline, Sujit, and then
Yes.
we'll organize some time.
Absolutely.
Not require a lot of time, but let me look at my calendar and then come back to you on that.
Absolutely. And I would also like to see whether we can do this as a collaborative effort. We have Taraka, we have Hasif,
Absolutely, yes.
and anyone else who is willing to, put their minds behind this live demo, then we can decide, the duration of that session which we want to do. Right?
We'll do that, sure.
So that's something actionable. The second thing, I also want to thank you for taking time and creating this spark, right? And we started as a dot, but now it's actually blooming into a blossoming futuristic idea which you're trying to transform, right? So I'm very excited to have you again. And I want to thank you, and on behalf of the ISC2 Colombo Chapter Board, for taking time to present your ideas and your experience. And a few announcements, right? So we have ISACA Sri Lanka chapter doing a session on forensics investigation, Windows forensics investigation on 31st May 2022 at 6 p.m. It's a virtual event, and I will post it on the social media platform. So those of you who have not received it, you can plan to join that event, and I'm sure that's going to be a useful one as well. Number two, we have got an invitation from Bureau Veritas. They are doing a virtual lead implementer training on privacy information management system. That is ISO 27701 from June 20th to 23rd, 4 days program. So those of you who are members of the ISC2 Colombo chapter, paid members, you will be eligible for a small discount. So details of which I will be mailing it across to you, right? The third one, not the last one, but also it's a futuristic thing which you're looking at. Our Women in Cybersecurity group is planning on running a series of presentations on zero trust. So we are looking at doing an event. Unfortunately, it is going to be conflicting with the ISACA's program, but the dates we had planned it earlier as well. So this is going to be on 31st of May as well. So there's going to be a session on zero trust on 31st May, 6 p.m. So with that note, I want to thank all of you who have made time to join us. Again, I want to thank my board for all the support they have extended in putting these programs together. So look forward to seeing you all on another program very soon on the 31st of May. Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sujit. Good night, guys. Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sujit. Thank you, Vinda.
Um,
Thank you all. Bye.